After a pitcher comes back from injury, what should be done to prevent re-injury? It's not fair to put that responsibility on a pitching coach, and you'll find out why. And there's a habit that begins early in a pitcher's life that's robbing velocity. You'll find out how to get those miles per hour back in Season 4, Episode 9 of The Fix. All right, Season 4, Episode 9 of The Fix. And here we are with baseball pitching motion troubleshooter Angel Borrelli. And Angel, this week we have a few interesting trending topics I want to go over. In our last episode, in episode number 8, and if listeners, you didn't hear that episode, you really should go back and listen to it. We had a lot of great stuff in there. One of our subjects was New York Mets pitcher Zack Wheeler. And what we discussed was that everyone is very concerned about Zack Wheeler's elbow because he just had Tommy John surgery 2 years ago. He had a rough time coming back, and there's been a lot of concern about how his elbow was going to react this year in 2017. And by the way, we are recording at the very end of July in 2017. With all the issues that he's had with his elbow, everyone's been very concerned about how his elbow is going to react. And he recently went on the disabled list with biceps tightness. That was before the All-Star break. And once again, everyone's very concerned about the elbow. Well, in our last episode, we talked about Zack Wheeler, and Angel, you told us that he might have trouble with his shoulder, not his elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so fast forward to here we are after the All-Star break, and Zack Wheeler is now on the disabled list with something called a stress reaction in the bone of his upper arm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to me, the upper arm sounds like the shoulder area, not the elbow.
Yes, it is. The upper arm is the bone that is the humerus, and the humeral head, the round head, fits into the shoulder joint. And for you parents out there that have kids, that's the growth plate that everybody's always worried about. It's the growth plate that gets injured for little league shoulder, it's called. So it is the head of the humerus which sits into the shoulder joint. It is therefore a part of the shoulder joint. So, wow, I can't believe it. Well, I guess I believe it. I said it last week. Scary, but I know why that would happen. What else is happening with him, Joe?
Well, it's kind of curious actually, because I have a couple different quotes that I want to go over with you that he said directly, and the team was talking about. So when he came out of his game, he said what happened with his arm. He said he called it small and stupid, but nothing to be worried about. He said, I think it's something that came along from not pitching for 2 years and just ramping it back up. I knew something might happen this season. I didn't expect something this harsh. It's something I can't help. And then they said that after believing he was going through a period of dead arm, the Mets put Wheeler on the disabled list with bicep tendonitis in late June. He said the doctors did not tell him if these two injuries were connected. I just know I sort of expected bumps in the road coming back this year. It's unfortunate because everything else is awesome. So, Zack Wheeler thinks that this upper arm injury is something related to being off for 2 years, not pitching for 2 years because he was recovering from Tommy John surgery. So that's what we have from him. Now, does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all because every pitcher who has Tommy John surgery is off and then he comes back, and of course we know that he was rehabbed correctly. But again, it's sort of like, if you when I look at his video and I look at his mechanics, it's so simple to see. When I do predictions like I do or make statements like I do, I'm honestly not just pulling this out of thin air. I'm looking at, the way if you see a nail in your tire, you might go, oh, that tire is going to be flat in a few weeks. Well, that's exactly what it's like when you look at, especially a pitcher that's had an injury. He's already telling you what's wrong, or the doctor's telling you what's wrong. to go back and do a forensic analysis, meaning now I'm looking for how did that part of the body get hurt. His mechanics are such, and he is pitching the same way now that he pitched prior to his Tommy John surgery. And, for everybody who's just kind of wondering, well, what does he do that could affect that upper arm? And the style that he uses, which some pitchers get away with, but if you've already had a serious surgery and now you're having pain, you're not getting away with it. So while these other guys can maybe get away with it, and maybe down the line they'll have an injury, you have to clean up the things that are related to your pain. And so if somebody were standing right behind you in line and you wanted to elbow them with your right arm, you would stick your elbow straight behind you. That position of the upper arm that goes behind you to stick that elbow out, that's the position his arm is in. As he's coming out of the glove, he goes into that angle. And when his elbow is way back there, like you've made contact with that human being back there, then he tries to lift the shoulder up to shoulder height. Well, the muscle that lifts the shoulder up to shoulder height can't work when your arm's back there, because it's supposed to work with your arm being to the side of you. So now he's trying to get up to a position from a position that's hard to move from. So that would give him, quote, dead arm. That would give him, quote, supraspinatus problems. That would give him, quote, bicep tendonitis problems. It's also why his arm is so late. He's got one of the most late arms in the major leagues. So whenever you have that happening, the pitcher's trying to make up for that lost time. And so the rest of the delivery is going to be a little bit off. But in terms of the stress around his shoulder, and the stress through his bicep and the stress through his supraspinatus, they are all connected. And once you've had had a surgery in your elbow and you have had bad mechanics, you're going to begin to have problems in the other joint. And as I said, this little thing he does, his shoulder was holding up, and it probably affected a part of his mechanics that caused the elbow to go. But this was just a matter of time. But you have to connect the dots. So this is why, this seriously, for somebody who does the work I do, this is so simple to see. And if anybody knows Zack and you want me to send you a still shot of the exact moment where his shoulder is being hurt, contact me. I will be happy to send it to you. That is how specific it is when you're looking at mechanics for the place where there's danger. And in fact, guys, when you make an adjustment to mechanics, if you know the moment where it happens, you go to the moment before to see where does he make that, where does he start to make that wrong move, and you just teach him to go in a little different direction. And I change that all the time, because guys who've had labrum surgery or elbow surgery that do that, that's the first thing we have to adjust. And when they adjust it, they love it, and also they pitch better because their arm's not late. So that's the story on that. Now, the stress reaction terminology is weird. Usually it's a stress fracture. Stress reaction, usually if it's on the bone, it would mean the tendon is pulling on the bone, and that would be tendonitis, but they're not saying stress fracture. They're not saying tendonitis. He says his bone hurts, so it's probably a stress fracture, but they're not saying that. So that terminology, stress reaction on the bone of the humerus, is a little bit odd. So we'll wait to see, because I'm sure something will come clear. But Zack is not going to get better, and he's such a good pitcher. When I watch him, even with these errors, he's got some, just the way he moves. Unless he fixes this, he's going to continue, because right now he's got the trifecta. He's got the bicep tendonitis. He had the dead arm, which is supraspinatus, and now he's got a slight stress in the bone of the arm. It can't get any worse than that, and if he doesn't improve the cause, he's going to be stuck in this merry-go-round.
Yeah, his direct quote on the pain that he was feeling, he said, it's soreness, bone soreness. It kind of aches. So he's feeling it. He's feeling it pretty badly. And,
yeah,
you talked about making an adjustment. When he first came up with the San Francisco Giants, when he was in their organization, they saw that he had a late arm and the inverted W, and they tried to make an adjustment, and it just didn't work out well. And when he was traded to the Mets, the Mets said, well, just go back to pitching the way you used to. Don't worry about what's going on
Yeah.
with your late arm and all that. And
Yeah.
so he's been very, he's not
Yes.
interested in getting adjustment. I would say it's probably because maybe the people who tried to adjust him previously, maybe they just didn't know the right way to get him going in the right direction.
Yes, well, Joe, I'm so glad you brought this up, and this is the thing that I think upsets me the most, and it's probably the biggest mountain to have to climb in terms of trying to get pitchers to understand that historically the people who are making the adjustments to mechanics are the pitching coaches. Pitching coaches, I love you, and I have the greatest respect for all your skills. It's not fair that you are given the job to make a change in movement when you do not have a background in anatomy and in movement and in motor control and in neurological sciences and in joint actions and kinesiology, biomechanics, all the things you really have to have levels of knowledge on to be able to go to a person who is performing a skill and make an adjustment to have them do it differently without interfering with the skill. Now, his arm goes to the back. So they probably were just trying to get him to go to the side. But guess what? The arm going to the back isn't the thing you adjust. You have to make the adjustment at an earlier part of the motion. And to do that, I'd have to film him from the front to see where does that motion go incorrectly. Because there's a point in his motion when he is moving correctly. It's sort of like you're following instructions to drive somewhere. And you think you're doing great. So you're going straight to the intersection. All of a sudden, you're supposed to go right, but you're at that moment and you don't know what to do, you go left. Okay, this is a moment where there's a moment he's going right, he's going correctly, he's absolutely fine. But the shoulder, which has the capability of going one way and then another way, and we'll call this, this elbow to the back, we'll call that to the south. He's sticking his elbow to the south when his arm should be going to the east. Okay, and his shoulder joint can move in both those planes, and the brain is firing it to go backward. Now, even though I've just said that to you, even if someone understands planes of motion, maybe a physical therapist is hearing this, you still have to know where do you intervene in the mechanics of this kid to find that moment where he has to signal that muscle. And guess what, guys? It's happening probably when the ball is maybe 2-3 inches out of the glove. He hasn't even, it could be the way he starts his descent. This is what I do for a living. So to find that he had a bad experience and then to have that, and what I love hearing, Joe, I didn't know this, is that he was open to letting them try to change it. I don't blame him for being closed about that right now. But please, for all the coaches out there, there is help. You've got to have the right person make the adjustment. I wouldn't have a business if Zack Wheeler came to see me and let's say he threw a pitch and let's say he's out of pain and I film him and I see this and he knows what his fastball feels like. He leaves there with his fastball feeling better. There's no way that I'm going to do something where he throws a pitch and says, oh, this is weird. Or, oh, man, I can't locate. Or, oh, wow, I'm like at 60 miles an hour. No, my business is I make the adjustment correctly to where he's like, whoa, I don't even feel that pain in my bone anymore. That's exactly what happens when you make the adjustment. And that is a product of knowing where and to start and knowing what muscles are doing what and not being able to identify. My job is to work with the pitcher and how he produces the motion, not pitching, which is what pitching coaches do. Two different things. That's why we as a team are so fantastic. When a pitching coach and myself get together, great things can happen. So I feel badly for Zack, but he's got to get on top of this. And I don't blame the Mets because here's what the Mets said. Wow, that adjustment didn't work so well. And what are they going to do? The Mets actually were smart. If you're not going to make the right adjustment, don't make one at all. So, wow, I didn't know Zack had been through that. I feel so badly even hearing this story.
Yeah, and it's a common story that many pitchers go through. They have some kind of a flaw in their mechanics, and not necessarily the right person was making the adjustment, and then things get worse. We've heard the story before. It happens over and over, and this is why we don't expect you, Angel, to know how to attack a hitter with some kind of a strategy or anything like that. And in the same way, pitching coaches shouldn't be expected to know exactly how the pitching motion is supposed to work. That's why we need both people helping out these pitchers.
Yes, exactly. Wow.
Yeah. So moving on, there's another pitcher that we've talked about in the past, a big right-hander named Stephen Strasburg that many people have heard of before. He, once again, was having some issues with his arm. This time he had a forearm problem. I want to go through, again, what he said and what his manager said and get an idea of what you might understand from hearing what has been said. So from what I understand, he came out of his most recent game because he had some forearm tightness. Now, this is what his manager said. "We think he's okay. We took him out for precaution. He couldn't get loose. We saw he kept shaking his arm." This is what Nationals manager Dusty Baker said. "So we just took him out for a precaution. He's had a little stiffness, couldn't really get loose, even though he was throwing the ball well." And from what I understand, his velocity was where it normally is. He was throwing his breaking pitches, everything. He was performing, but apparently he was having trouble getting loose. Now, this is what exactly Stephen Strasburg said. "It's not really intense pain in a specific area. It's just kind of like general tightness. I'm having a tough time to get really loose out there, and I think it's just the All-Star break kind of messed it up for me throwing-wise and treatment-wise. It is what it is. I think my arm is just kind of taking a little while to get back into the swing of things. I pitched through it the last game and obviously did well, but still kind of lingering there. I'd rather be smart about it." So originally the diagnosis was forearm tightness. They have since updated that diagnosis to, I believe, a nerve impingement. Nationals PR representative clarified to say Strasburg had a nerve impingement that has been alleviated. Now, that's what they're officially saying. Now, we can't necessarily trust what they're saying because the trade deadline is coming up, and if they think that Strasburg might be out for a while, they need to go out in the market and get another pitcher within the next few days. So they may not be tipping their hand. They may just trying to, say, "Oh, this is not a major thing," so that they can go make a trade. But based on what we heard from the manager and from Strasburg himself, what do you think could be going on with Steven Strasburg's arm this time?
Well, I do know I looked at the pitch that he threw that hurt him. So, and I'd like to actually probably save some of that commentary for the teaching moment. But what I want to just address is what does that mean if he had a nerve thing going on? The ulnar nerve, runs on the inside of the arm, and it runs and very often on the upper arm. The nerve gets entrapped, and sometimes it gets entrapped so badly they have to go in and do surgery. If a pitcher's upper arm is tight or sore or just on a tissue level, just the reason why you might go get a massage, and then you get the massage and then everything feels great because a muscle has moved over on top of something or it's pulling on a bone that's hitting something. The way massage or deep tissue can help you is possibly what they utilize to get him feeling better for this. But again, if a pitcher comes into me and he's got that problem, yes, you're going to want to do the immediate work to relieve that, but you also need to look to make sure that he's not doing something that is incorrect. And I was able, because Fox News, Fox Sports had up on a report the pitch that they think he hurt himself on, and I saw exactly what he did, and it's a product of his history. So if you don't mind, I'd like to save that a little bit for the teaching moment, only because I think that these are important things to understand when a pitcher has a history and how you need to connect the dots with any new pain that they're starting to have.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah. Do you have anybody else for trending?
Yeah.
Maybe we can throw in there as well.
Yeah, sure. There's another ace that just went on the disabled list. And again, another familiar face and name for us, Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers, who we spoke about last year. Season 3, Episode 9, he had a back injury, and we dedicated almost an entire episode to explaining Clayton Kershaw's back injury. And from what you told us was that it was related to a mechanical flaw. So as it turns out, this year, just about a few days ago, Clayton Kershaw left the game. I'm going to go to the news item again here. Moments before the second inning of the Dodgers' victory over Atlanta, Kershaw delivered a warm-up pitch and felt a little something in my back that wasn't normal, he said. Mm-hmm. He grimaced, attempted to gut through the inning. From behind the plate, catcher Austin Barnes noticed distraction flitter through his eyes, as if concerned about the body occupied his mind more than the threat of the opposing hitters. He looks kind of messed up, Barnes said to the umpire. So Barnes was right. Kershaw finished the inning and left the game. The Dodgers announced a diagnosis of tightness on the right side of his lower back. Mm-hmm. I believe that has been updated to, they're not really sure what's going on with his back, but they said it's not a disc issue, which he had last year. Again, they're saying it's not a disc issue, but it's general tightness in the lower back. So again, we have feedback from a pitcher. It sounds like he was having a problem, and instead of taking himself off the mound, he decided to gut through it, which probably isn't the best thing to do, right?
Yeah, not a good thing to do. And again, I want to talk about these things. Actually, can we just flip right now so everybody knows we're about to have our little glorious teaching moment here? So I can, I want to talk about these because there's something that's common. And actually, Joe, it's common to Zack and to Kershaw and to Strasburg. When you have something serious that went on, with Zack, we've got this elbow surgery. With Kershaw, you have a herniated disc. With Strasburg, you've had an elbow surgery, and I think when he first started, he was having some shoulder discomfort, etc. Actually, was Strasburg only a elbow, or did he have labrum surgery?
He only had the UCL problem.
Okay, because with his, remember he came on when he came on, everybody was talking. In fact, I think that's where the inverted W came from, that terminology. But anyway, there's something common going on here, particularly with Kershaw and Strasburg, and this is the deal: when you've got a pitcher and he's had something serious go on, and then he gets back into play, whenever he's pitching, one of the things that should happen is you should make sure. You should be doing preventive work. Okay, now we've got him back. He's great. Now let's have him start the throwing program. And really and truly, somebody has to come in and take a look to see, is he doing anything that's going to make him vulnerable? They did not do that in these three cases. There's no way they did it, and I'll tell you why. Because Kershaw, and actually you mentioned that I said he had a mechanical flaw. Kershaw, who is such a great pitcher, he actually has a postural flaw. And for anybody listening to me who may be a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, or somebody who has, understands movements, he's doing a back position that if you in life do it, you're going to blow out a disc. And he's doing it while he's pitching. And he's doing it in the first part of his motion. And if you want to hear all the details, the way I addressed it before, he comes off of his balance leg, and in his stride, his pelvis is what we call in a posteriorly tilted position. He has a posterior tilt to his pelvis. Now, what this means, just for the normal layperson, is he's taking his spine and putting the bones in a position where it stresses the discs. He's doing this while he's on one leg and while he's creating his stride. Because he then pulls himself out, but because he's got the back weakness there that allows him to do this incorrectly, at the next moment where his back needs to be great, which is in his follow-through, he goes into a posterior tilt again, which means that his low back is taking the stress of all the deceleration instead of his butt muscles and his low back, which does decelerate. But it decelerates when it's in a position of extension. And you don't need to know what that means, but you just need to know he's not in a position of extension when he decelerates. So what did I just say? He's got his back in the incorrect position. I noticed this when he first was diagnosed. We talked about it on the show. I did a lot of research this morning, found the pitch where he was hurt, his last pitch he threw, which, by the way, when I do a forensic analysis, that's what I'm looking for. I say, show me film. from the game you got hurt in, because that will tell you the story. So on his case, I was able to, and Strasburg as well. With Kershaw, I was able to see the pitch. He did not change a thing. And here's what's so frustrating to me: they were asking him about his frustration, and here's what he said: "Just see the blind spot here. I've done countless hours of back maintenance and rehab, just trying to stay healthy. I felt really good." So there's definitely frustration. He's actually scratching his head going, what's going on? What's going on is you cannot use your back incorrectly. First of all, if you're healthy, you shouldn't use it incorrectly. But if you've had a herniated disc or you have back problems, I mean, anybody out there who's had back surgery knows this. What's the first thing they do? They learn how to sit correctly. They learn not to slump over. The spine has to have the bones in a certain configuration. He's so good that the forces are being applied to the spine in an incorrect way. And guess what? If he would fix this, he'd be out of pain, and he would also be able to throw harder. And this is such a simple thing, because the problem that's lacking with him is nobody's told him. Nobody's shown him. This is something that's happening at the part of the motion where he would feel perfectly safe to do an intervention, because it has nothing to do with the rest of the motion where he applies his wonderful gift. So, it's not like I'm going in and having him move his arm differently. So the sadness is that nobody's done this, and nobody is looking, because I know darn well that if there were a chiropractor on the team, or people who understand posture, which could be some physical therapists, not all, some athletic trainers, not all, if they looked at this and they saw it, they go, oh, because it's a position when the back's in, it stresses the discs. The same thing with Strasburg. He's got an issue in his forearm, but what's happened is when you have a pitcher who has had elbow surgery, the thing you look for when they return to play is, are they trying to avoid force on the elbow in the place where the forces on the elbow are the greatest? In other words, Joe, if you fell and skinned your knee, you're going to find ways to kneel down and maybe not kneel on that knee, twist your leg so that it's not on the little sore part. You're going to find a way to move around it. And what Strasburg, and this is amazing to me that you mentioned the nerve, because what Strasburg did on that pitch is what many pitchers do. So let me ask you a question, Joe. When I say that a position of max external rotation for a pitcher, when he's facing the plate, his forearm is laying backwards, it looks like it's parallel to the ground, his upper arm is just straight across. Can you visualize that position? Okay, good. And anybody who can't, if you go on Angel Borrelli Pitching, which is my Facebook page, there's some photos, and I put up a photo where it has that position, and it also has a bowling ball hanging off the back, and it shows how many pounds of force are on the elbow at that time. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can do that. That position is where the elbow's at the greatest, the UCL's at the greatest stress, and the forces are the greatest on the elbow. What happens to all Tommy John guys when they come back is their brain is smart. It's not going to just put you in that position. They find different ways to avoid that angle and that direct force, because the force is absolutely direct, from front to back, back to front, towards the plate in that line. And what Stephen did on that pitch, I don't know if he did it on everyone, I know he did it on this, is he put his arm, as it was approaching that position, he twisted his trunk to the left, the pitching arm lowered, and then he delivered the ball. He looked funny when he released that ball. The announcer said, that's the pitch he hurt himself on, because look how funny his forearm looks. That announcer was great. His forearm looked funny, but it wasn't a forearm problem. He released the ball in such a funny angle that the arm popped in front of him and looked funny. But you see, that's the difference in forensic analysis and just looking at what you see. Yes, this announcer saw that forearm looking funny. I saw the delivery that caused the forearm to look funny. He injured himself with a weird delivery, not possibly a little strain in the follow through, but he accelerated and released his arm in a weird position. And guess what's so interesting, Joe? Because I did not know about the nerve. The problem in when you lower the arm and you twist your upper body away, so his arm angle at release was strange. The stress is on the the medial part of the upper arm, which is where that nerve lays. So I was blown away when you said that. So he's delivering the ball with a way that is compensating for the surgery he had. So we've got two great pitchers. Not Wheeler, because he's still doing the same thing. But, well, actually, we've got Wheeler and Kershaw doing the same thing they did when they got injured. So let's not be surprised they're still hurt. And we've got Strasburg, who is doing what's called a compensation type of change in his mechanics. He's made a tiny adjustment. And like I said, I don't know if he did it just on this pitch or if he's doing it on a certain type of pitch, but it doesn't matter. This is the kind of way we have to start to look at our pitchers who are injured. If you're going to keep them on the team, if you're going to bring them back, and college coaches and high school coaches, if you've got pitchers coming back from an injury, and let's say they're your best pitchers, which usually they are. They're throwing hard, they're more vulnerable. When they say, the doctor released me, and I'm also doing my throwing program, get somebody or you learn, what do I need to look for? Say, well, what exactly injury did you have? And whatever body part that he injured, look at that body part to see if it looks normal to you in the motion, because chances are you're going to see him protecting it. So let's not feel so confused like, wow, we never have control over injuries. All three of these pitchers should not be injured right now. And if they are injured, when looking at the mechanics of what they did, if they didn't have anything wrong, then you can say, wow, you know what? This is one of those injuries you just can't help. But when I go and look and I see in black and white what they're doing that's wrong, this is sad to me. This should not be happening. So I want everyone to get that this does not have to happen. If you think it does, who's going to want to be a pitcher? This could have been avoided. Now we've got three guys whose careers are on the line. So I have a prediction for Kershaw, which I hate to say, is because he has a herniated disc, he's already on, he's in the red zone. If he doesn't correct this, he's going to blow out his back. And there's going to be no question on this. And anybody who's listening who's a chiropractor is going to agree with me. You cannot round your back, ever. No football player does it, no athlete does it, and even when you're sitting around and being a normal person, you have to have an arch in your back, what people call an arch, and because that's the back in extension. Wheeler is just going to go, now that his bone is affected, as I have always said, you've got the muscles protecting the lower structures. If his bone is affected, that means all the soldiers that were supposed to be guarding the bone did not do their job, which means he's breaking himself down to the basic level. So that's what's going on with Kershaw. And as far as Strasburg goes, he's compensating, which can mean not necessarily that he's hurting from his elbow surgery, but his brain reorganized how he does what he does, because the brain is that cool. It's going to, of course, reorganize. Training has to go in place after surgery so that you don't allow the brain that doesn't really know what you're doing to reorganize the way you use your arm. And that is the take-home message from today. So these three guys, I wish that this wasn't happening to them. And the scenario they should all be in now should be better than what they're in right now.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about in the first part of the show, which is, all three pitchers need some kind of a mechanical adjustment, and they don't have the correct resources to make the mechanical corrections, and as a result, those corrections aren't being made. I imagine that somebody like a Clayton Kershaw or Stephen Strasburg, who have been such tremendous pitchers over the last several years, no one wants to touch what they're doing for fear that their performance will be affected in a negative way. And when I say nobody, I mean people that shouldn't be making adjustments to a pitching motion. If they could go to someone who has the correct background, someone like you who could make the adjustments, apply the adjustments, I would imagine that not only would they be pain-free, they would probably pitch even better than they already are. And that's a scary thought for Major League Baseball hitters.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, we've gone through our teaching moment, and now it's time for the Getting It Done segment with science. So what do you have for us this week, Angel?
Well, there's something I've seen on some of my college pitchers this week that I'm working with, a few guys that have come in to see me, and I started thinking about how interesting it is, and this is a very special message to all the coaches out there, how interesting it is that I'll see something on a college pitcher who's good, and I'm looking at, of course, his mechanics and how I can make him better. And I see one or two things he's doing that I know he's been doing since he was a little kid. And it's because when kids are little and you're teaching them how to pitch, you teach them certain things. And unless it's changed, this movement doesn't change developmentally. In other words, every sports skill that's taught usually has some alterations to it when you have a kid doing it, right? You don't want the kid to get hurt. So you teach him certain things, and then as he develops, the motion has to sort of mature with him. And the flaw that I'm talking about is what young little kids are taught to do with their rear leg so that they can quickly get into the fielding position. So, Joe, I know that you were taught as a kid to be a catcher and a pitcher. So I want to ask you about this to help it be more clear for the listeners. So do you recall that a very important thing that you were probably taught when you were very young as a pitcher was to hurry up and get into the fielding position because the ball might come right back at you, right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we used to try to emulate the old Yankee Ron Guidry, who used to do exactly that. He'd jump like a cat into fielding position right after his follow through.
Exactly. And so the way that a little kid processes that is that, okay, so your leg, if you're a right-handed pitcher, your right leg, you're going to start the pitching motion, but the pitcher is being told where he has to end up in the fielding position. Now, whenever the body is learning a movement and it is told where it has to end up, it is task-oriented, so it develops the skills and the motor pathways to start the pitch and end up in the fielding position. So you'll see little kids, they start to pitch, and as they're releasing the ball, they will probably not be getting over their front leg. They'll be bringing their back leg around. The right-handed guy will swing it to the right, and then he's in this wide fielding position. You're picturing that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that's a good thing to teach little kids because they have to be prepared to catch the ball. But just so everybody knows, on a developmental level, at some point, that development has to be, okay, you have to now learn how to go through the entire pitching motion, get over your leg, go through a proper follow-through, which means the back leg is going to be straight behind you and up in the air. Then you stand up out of your motion, and then you go into fielding. Are you following me?
Yes.
So that you're doing a complete over-the-front leg pitching motion. So here I have college guys who they want more velocity. I view them from the side and film them from the side, and they look like they're pitching from what I call this pitching from a chair. You see them go into their front leg lands, you see them accelerate, but they don't quite get their butt up over their body so that their butt stays behind their front foot. Their arm is reaching out. Their shoulders are definitely behind their knee. And they look like they're sitting and then reaching out with their arm. So this guy says to me, I've got to get more velocity. Maybe he's in mid-80s. He's got to get to high 80s. Or maybe he's in high 80s. He's got to get to the 90s. And he's like 2 feet away from a release point that he could have, or 18 inches, which is huge to velocity. And the reason why he does that is because his brain is saying, I've got to hurry up and get my leg to the side. So this pitcher stays low, doesn't get over his front leg, and the rear leg will lift up about 3 inches and then swing to the fielding position, as opposed to allowing the body to go forward. The back leg comes way up in the air. He uses his standing leg to bring him up, and then he goes into fielding. So he's cutting off the pitching motion because he has retained this little thing of hurry up and get into fielding. Is that making sense, Joe?
Definitely.
Yeah. So here's what the message is to all of you coaches. And guys, I know I've got coaches from universities out there, great coaches. When you see a pitcher, you've got a pitcher, and it looks like he's not getting over his front leg. Or you've got a little kid who is doing this, and now all of a sudden he's becoming 14 and 15. Maybe you teach this to the kids, you're a youth coach, but then you notice that he's not finishing his pitch, he's not getting over his front leg. This is when you have to take the mature pitcher who is old enough to take the correction and also move fast enough to get into the fielding position, but not have it affect in a deleterious way the pitching motion. You have to first notice, is what's keeping him behind his leg that his back leg never really moves upward towards the sky. It's his butt staying down low, and just as he goes forward, he swings his leg to the side. That will keep him, of course, from going forward. When you notice a pitcher is having that style of a rear leg movement, and you also notice he's not getting over his front leg, and trust me, they go together. You can't go sideways with the leg. That hip is supposed to be in what we as kinesiologists call extension. That leg is going to stay low and swing around in a whole different plane of motion if that pitcher thinks that he's got to get into fielding. And he could be a college pitcher still hanging on to that pattern, because the truth is people really don't change their patterns very much as they get older unless they've had instruction. And even pitching coaches know, we want you to get over your front leg. We want you to release closer to the plate. They may not know how to teach the rear leg to keep you from doing that, but I want all the coaches, if you have pitchers out there, and it doesn't matter their age, and you see them barely getting up off the ground and swinging the leg to the side, and it never really goes up, they have an incomplete pitching motion. They're not getting over their front leg as much as they could. They're not getting as close to the plate as they could. And they're doing the one thing that I think is the saddest thing, is when a pitcher leaves miles per hour on the mound because he didn't know how to get it behind the ball, because he left his backside down and swinging to the side instead of going forward over the front leg.
All right. Well, how would you correct that in a younger pitcher? Like what would you tell him to do, or like some kind of words or things that you would have him do to try to make sure that he does it correctly?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would put them on the mound. I would have them get into what looks like the ball release position. So their front leg is bent, their back leg's on the rubber, the back leg is pulled completely straight, both feet are facing forward. I'd have him take his pitching arm and actually put it out to where the release is. So he's leaning forward over his front leg. His back leg is still down, stabilizing him. He's over the front leg. And now he's got to get a little more going there. So what he's got to do is have the front side go down like a teeter-totter and the back leg go up. I would have him just do that action, which for people who understand motion, that would be in a right-handed pitcher, his left hip would be flexing. So he's with the bent knee, back leg's on the rubber, arm is way out in front towards the plate as if his ball has just left his hand. So we'll call that ball release. And now he's going to tilt downward, bringing that straight arm towards the ground, and his back leg needs to come straight up. So if you looked at him from the side, he would look exactly like a teeter-totter from his release point to his back foot. As the front side goes down, the back leg comes up. Tell him he's supposed to look like a teeter-totter. Go stand next to his leg, his right leg, on the mound. So as he goes forward, he doesn't start swinging the leg because, of course, he'll hit you. And you make him go down and up, down and up. So he's touching the ground with his front hand, or maybe going, 3/4 of the way down. His back leg comes up like a teeter-totter. Then the back leg goes back down and the front arm comes up. Then the front arm goes down and the back leg comes up. You have him moving back and forth. The left hip is the axis. Did you follow that, Joe?
Yes.
And so that's the simple way. Coaches, remember this. You have to teach a feel to a specific motion you want. And then when the pitcher feels the motion, even though we know that's not how it goes exactly in pitching, he's not going down and up, down and up. Once he gets the feel, he will be able to take that and integrate it into the motion. And his back hip has to know how to his back leg has to be able to go up. The reason why you don't teach this to the 8-year-olds is they don't have the strength in their front leg to support that. So you already know that, so you're taking the best of both worlds. Well, he can't get over the front leg, so let me make sure he's protected. So you teach him how to get into fielding. But at some point, the pitcher has to be able to go over his front leg, finish his pitch, back leg's up in the air. And when you see pitchers in a good follow-through position, their back leg is up. But when kids don't have that sense and they don't know how to do it, they'll be swinging the leg around to the side. So that's my little tip for teaching that. But I want everyone to look at this because I saw so many college guys. And when I said, you're still doing this the way you did when you were 7, they go, and when they learn how to do it, they love it because they know they're releasing much closer to the plate. And guess what else happens to the mature pitcher? He can do more with his pitch if his acceleration path is bigger. And if he's going forward with his entire body, which is what pitching is, he has a longer acceleration path and he can do way more with his exotic pitches. The pitcher who swings his leg to the side, his brain has made that decision to do that. Prior to the motion, he's only going halfway through his motion and then staying over in a certain position so he can swing his leg to fielding. And that's the way that the error is made, and it's also the way the patterns are developed.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I also have coached hitting, and I know that I've seen a lot of hitters, they kind of cut off their swing after they make contact. They kind of just make contact and then their swing kind of stops. So we teach them to swing all the way through the ball and get, their full hip rotation. It sounds like a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different body movement, but the same kind of concept. Now, I just wanted to reiterate something that you said. When you have a pitcher that's 7 or 8 years old and just learning how to pitch, he might not be strong enough to be able to get into that position. And I want everyone to hear that again, because you have a pitcher that's 8 or 9 years old and he's not doing it correctly, probably just because he's not yet strong enough. Maybe it's something that you teach at 10, 11, 12, or as his body develops a little more.
Yes, exactly. And this message is really for all the high school and college coaches that I talk to, because believe it or not, I'm correcting this in high school and college kids. When they want more velocity and you see that they're not getting over their front leg, it's usually because their rear leg is holding them back because it needs to stay behind them so they can swing down to get into fielding, as opposed to allowing it to come up so they can go more forward. And so this message is really, the youth coaches keep on teaching what you're teaching to protect our kids, but as they develop and get into high school and college, because you cannot believe, if they were doing it as a kid, they're probably still doing it now, and you will not believe the number of pitchers that do that. And probably your coaches right now are picturing some pitchers that do it, and now you'll know, oh, that's what's going on. He's thinking he's got to get into fielding. He's getting into fielding too soon.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that you're seeing that at the college and high school levels, because to be quite honest, I see major league pitchers who don't really get over their front leg properly.
Yeah.
It's a very common issue.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this episode. I think we got a heck of a lot of great information in here, and I just want to thank you, Angel, once again for sharing your knowledge. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Fix. Please pass along to another pitcher, coach, or parent please subscribe to the podcast. If you have no idea what a podcast is, go to the App Store on your smartphone and search for Baseball Pitching the Fix, and you can download our app. If you want to learn more about Angel, you can go to her website. It's gymscience.com. You can also email her, angel@gymscience. For more about me, Joe Janish, you can visit fixingpitchers.com, and you can also hit me up on Twitter @fixingpitchers. Both Angel and I hope that you learned something this episode. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. And in the meantime, we wish you safe and effective performance on the pitching mound.